Thank you. Thank you. I genuinely amaze myself sometimes. Imagine, 13th of March, 9:30 p.m. You've just come back from TEDx rehearsals. You're exhausted beyond measure. You sink into your bed, you pick up your phone, and in the dark, you begin the mind-numbing routine of switching to the same 3 apps: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. This, of course, was me, as well as many others last night. And the night before that, and the night before that too, and so on. Now, that's scary to me. If you know me, you know I'm a numbers guy. So let me crunch some numbers for you. Firstly, practically everyone in this room and everyone watching online is a billionaire. A time billionaire. We all have approximately 60 years left to live. Those 60 years are, wait for it, 2 billion seconds. Next, research shows that Gen Z spends 4 hours, 15 minutes per day on their phone. Now, this is funny because if we pull out our screen time, the numbers will be just a bit off. But this all ties together when these 4 hour, 15 minutes per day are spread across 60 years. That is 335 million seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, our net worth is going down by the second. And yet, we choose to spend 335 million of it doing Instagram, TikTok, YouTube? That's why, when the TEDx event application asked me, what is your goal in organizing this event? A simple answer came to mind. I want to help replace superficiality with depth in my youth community's minds. So that being said, sit back, relax, and please take full advantage of these 7 incredible speakers here to share their life experiences with you in a 15-minute TED Talk today. Now, what you see in front of you would not at all be possible without our sponsors. I'd firstly like to thank CableNet, our main sponsors, who've elevated us to new heights. I'd like to thank the Russian Cultural Center for being our venue sponsors. I'd like to thank FML Ship Management, University of Nicosia, and Consultix for believing in us, having faith in our vision. Finally, I'd like to thank Pirguvakis Law Firm and HJS Insurance, who've been with us since day 1. Oh, and I think we'll all be thanking GetFresh and iHeart for their incredible food and coffee services at the end of the day. Now, I'd like to officially welcome you all, both physically and virtually, to the very first TEDxYouth event in Cyprus, TEDxYouth at Engomi. Now for a video from TED themselves.
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons. People gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Cool. We'll be beginning today's show with an incredible pianist, Apollon Kalamenos.
Hello to everyone. I'm Apollon. And first of all, I would like to thank TEDx organizers for inviting me to this, to the first youth event in Cyprus. Today, I will be performing 2 preludes of mine, which I composed during the first and the second lockdown. The first one is called Reminiscence, and it's inspired by the lack of a person's presence who I was in love with. The main theme comes again and again throughout the piece due to my instinct feeling of nostalgia. The climax shows up with powerful chords and it ends up with sensitive whispers. The second piece is named The Sunflower Field, and it's dedicated to my best friend. We both have an instinct passion for sunflowers, and we've always wanted to spend a whole day or a week at a field full of these kind of sunflowers. It has an ethereal atmosphere since it's full of soft impressions and continuing sounds like waves. Hope you enjoy them.
third time the red carpet. You're all sick of seeing me. I'd now like to place myself with a man of incredible energy, grace, power, Andros Zacharia, our host. Awkward silence.
Put your hands together, everybody. Let me feel your energy. Woo! You with me? Come on. I wanna make my stand. I wanna be somebody. I really think I can. For the first time, from the inside to the outside, something feels right. And I can't be anybody but me. I might as well be. Good morning and welcome to TEDxYouth Engomi, everybody. Can someone please tell me why they never told me that my ex was going to be here? Come on, give me a break. Despite everything that has happened and everything that is going on, we have managed to make things happen. Together today, we will make it a special kind of day. One of those days that we will be able to share stories and memories to our loved ones about what went on and what we heard at TEDxYouth Engomi. Without you guys here and those watching us from home, those backstage, and those that were involved at every single stage of this production, we would not have a TEDx event. This is the first of its kind in Cyprus, and you all are part of it. So let's take a moment to express some gratitude. A round of applause once again, please. And on that note, now that you've all warmed your hands up, we would like to introduce you to our very own TEDx clap, which is called the Power Clap. Do you want to know more about it? I'm going to do it once, and then we're going to do it together. And it goes like this. Pow, pow, oh yeah. Do you think you could do that? Okay. On three, let's do it together. 1, 2, 3. Pow, pow, oh yeah. By the way, be careful where you're punching, yeah? Because on the pow, pow, it might sound like a ow, ow. Just be careful, the person in front of you. Okay, let's do it one more time. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Pow, pow. Oh, yeah. Brilliant. Who can tell us the theme of today's event? Think deep. Think deep. Think deep. Think deep. If we were to close our eyes and repeat these words continuously and slowly, it would sound like a mantra capable of sending us off into a deep, deep meditative state. Everything that exists in this moment right now is because of a thought by someone, somewhere, some time ago. And just like those that will stand before us today will give us their thought, their mantra, taking us into their depth. To imagine yourselves that you're holding this pocket-sized, expandable bag,
And at each moment throughout the day, I want you to fill it up with different things. It could be an idea. It could be a concept. It could be an energy. It could be a body language. It could be a name. It could be an act of kindness, a feeling. It could be anything which will be insightful and helpful for you. We will experience different emotions from start to finish today. And that is what we want. That is what we need. Because with emotion comes motion. And with motion, we can achieve some good old evolution. Are you ready to evolve? Are you ready to go deep? To kickstart our day, our first speaker will pilot us from the altitudes of his own life to help us fine-tune our own attitudes towards living more meaningful. A round of applause, please, for Nicholas Andreu.
You'd think that something like how to live a meaningful life is something that we talk about all the time, given how obviously important it is to us. But actually, who are we supposed to talk about it with? Our friends? I mean, they're probably just as confused as we are. Schools? Universities? Too busy teaching us more important things. And our parents? Oh, no. We don't talk to our parents about that kind of stuff. And so, in my experience, we just never talk about it and go through life on this sort of weird autopilot thing until one day you wake up and you realize that life is really, really flat. And as you lie there awake in the middle of the night, you can't help but wonder, why did no one talk to me about this stuff before? And so this is my attempt to do that today. Now let's start with the advice that we do get, and we'll call this advice Plan A. And Plan A sounds a bit like this. You have to do really well at school. You have to get into a great university like Oxford or Cambridge. You don't just do a bachelor's, you do a master's, a PhD, maybe an MBA. While at university, you're supposed to meet the perfect partner. Smart, funny, hardworking, and caring. You leave university, get a great job with a huge salary. You use that salary to buy a house, 4 bedrooms minimum. You guys move in together, buy some cars, get married, have some kids, get some pets to keep things interesting. A dog, a big one, because they're quite fun, and maybe some fish, because they're great feng shui. And then, once you've done all of that, Plan A, tick. But Plan A didn't really cut it for me. I did all right at school. I went to the good universities, got the PhD, got the MBA, had some exciting jobs, long-term relationships. I bought the house. I have a fancy-ish car. Never had the dog, but had the fish. And life was still just a bit grey. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is a great recipe if you want a safe life, a comfortable life. But if you want a meaningful life, I'm not so sure. And it's not just me experiencing this. Our planet has never been richer or more educated. And yet, even before the pandemic, things were going very wrong. Obesity rates through the roof, mental health issues everywhere. More and more people disengaged at work, and fewer loving relationships. It's like the core of how we derive meaning from our lives was being eroded away. And so, maybe Plan A is done. We need a new plan. And we're going to call this plan, Plan B. Now, at the heart of Plan B is an idea that hit me a few years ago, and I'm going to try and recreate that revelation here today. I need you guys to think of the answer to a simple question. What do you want to be when you grow up? Or, if you think you are grown up, what did you want to be before you grew up? So let's see. How many of you, the first thought that came to mind was something career-related? I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be an architect. Show of hands. Okay, so quite a few of you. And how about those who instead, that first thought, was something achievement-related? I want to be successful. I want to be rich. I want to be famous. Okay, a few more of you. And thirdly, and be honest with this one, how many of you, that first thought was about a state of emotional well-being? I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled. I can see 3 hands. So that's interesting, right? The question was about being, and yet our minds automatically go to doing and achieving. In fact, we're obsessed with that. But maybe, if we want meaning in our lives, we just need to be more. I mean, think about it. You are happy. It's a state of being. You don't do happy. That doesn't make sense. It's about being. And I heard this from the Dalai Lama. I read about it in the science of psychology. And everyone I know who's loving life, that's pretty much how they think about it. So I'm convinced we just need to be more. And so, how do we do that? Well, I've got 3 tips for you. Tip number 1, we need to appreciate the moment. We all walked from those entrance doors to our seats. But if I was to ask you how many steps it took you to do that, you'd probably have no idea. And that's the point. Every moment, there's all this information from the world around us, our minds, our bodies, and unless we pay attention to it, it's just gone. It's like it never happened. And you might say, well, Nick, who cares how many steps it takes to get from A to B? Fair enough. But what if we are missing information that is extremely valuable to us? This is me at the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, the world's highest freestanding mountain at just under 6,000 meters above sea level. It takes 6 days, 12 plus hours of hiking each to get there. On day 3, I developed altitude sickness. On day 4, insomnia. And so a few hours before that summit, there I was, physically exhausted, mentally barely able to keep it together, but focused on that next step. And here's the thing. The ground up there is basically sand from the harsh winds constantly eroding it. So when you step on it, your foot slips. And so you muster all of your strength for that next step. Given how tired you are, it's a tiny step. And then it slips back. But you keep going. Step and slip and step and slip. It is painful, agonizingly slow. But you are resolute because you've seen 1,000 versions of that photo and you are determined to add yours to the collection. And so you keep going. And a few hours later, you come round this hill and there you see it in the distance. That sign. Congratulations. You've made it. And that moment, I do not remember. I remember some things about the moment. I remember taking out my camera, checking the battery, giving it to Lucy, taking my pose and saying, "Have you got it?" But I don't remember the view, that once-in-a-lifetime view. I don't remember what my body felt like. I don't remember what my soul was saying to me, having achieved this monumentous thing. But at least I had the photo. Now, for me, it's the photo. For you, it might be the car, the house, the job title. The point is, we get so caught up in doing and achieving, we forget about this very moment. And so, tip number 1, if we want to be more, we need to appreciate the moment. Tip number 2, we need to feel our way to the right decisions. Now, decisions are interesting because we make them in a relatively short period of time, but they play out over the rest of our lives. Where we choose to live, who we choose to marry, what career we choose to go on. And so obviously, if we can make better decisions, we stand a better chance of living a meaningful life. If you read a book on how to make good decisions, it will tell you to do something like this. First, put all the criteria down, and then weight the criteria, because some are more important than others. Put all the options along the top, and fill in the blanks. The option with the highest score is the option that you should choose. And I do this a lot. This is my spreadsheet where I'm trying to figure out what country to live in. But despite using this process, I kept feeling like I was getting my decisions wrong until it hit me. This is a process which uses a very logical, rational, problem-solving part of the brain. What about emotions? What about feelings? We need to bring that into the mix somehow. And it's actually remarkably simple. Let's say you're studying history and economics at school, and you need to choose what career to go on. Now, your career coach might say, well, economics, you learn a lot of good skills studying that. Those skills are in high demand, so you're likely to get a job. And actually, those jobs are pretty well paid. And so, on balance, that looks like a pretty great choice. Now, here's the challenge. When you leave an economics lesson, you feel a bit down. You're kind of not that bothered about what your friends are doing or what's going on in the world. You're just disengaged. But when you leave a history lesson, it's different. You're smiling. You do want to know what your friends are up to. You are curious about ideas in the world. There's energy there. You're engaged. And so, yeah, that economics choice is probably going to be a stable career choice. But is it going to be the thing that gets you up in the morning and has you excited about each day? Maybe not. And look, I'm not saying that we make the decision solely on how we feel. But what I am saying is that that spreadsheet needs another row that says, how do I feel about these options? And it should probably be weighted pretty high. You might be thinking, feelings to make life decisions. What is this guy on? But here's how I know I'm right. At some point in your late 20s, early 30s, everybody you know is going to get married. And if you spend your time thinking about this stuff, that's a bit depressing. But it does give you an opportunity to figure out how people make really hard decisions. And so I asked them. And what I was expecting to hear was something like, well, this person makes me laugh, they're really smart, they love me a lot, and that's obviously really important to me. So clearly, I should go with them. In other words, here are my criteria, here's how I value them, and this is the option which is the best. But no one said that to me. Literally, no one said that. Instead, they said, well, you kind of just get a feeling. You know they're the one. One of the hardest decisions we have to make, made on the basis of feeling. And so if we can do it there, why not elsewhere? And so, tip number 2, if we want to be more, we need to feel our way to the right decision. Tip number 3, follow our values. Now again, this sounds simple. Step 1, figure out your values. Step 2, make decisions based on those values. Step 3, have a great life. But now the hard part. We often don't know what our values are, and we find it really hard to make decisions based on those. So let's start here. The clue is in the name. It's your values, what you find important, not to be confused with what your parents, partner, or school thinks is important. Now, I really struggled with this one until it occurred to me. If you want to know what someone's values are, think about what they do when they're really tired. Because when you're really tired, you don't care what anyone else thinks. You just want to do stuff that you want to do. And so, one person, if they're tired, they might want to hang out with friends. Another might want to read a book or watch a documentary. And a third might want to go for a hike in the mountains. That first person probably values human connection, relationships. The second, intellectual stimulation. And the third, adventure. And all three of those are my values, by the way. And so there we go, some clarity on what our values are. Now, the really hard part, decisions. That's me again, and behind me is Gershon, and behind us is the high street of a village in Narok County, Kenya. Now, Gershon grew up in rural Kenya, and like many in that situation, he was dealt quite a tough hand in life. His father passed away when he was very young, and as the main breadwinner of the family, that left them in quite a difficult position. Gershon dropped out of school and even spent some time living on the streets. But he's a remarkable character. And to cut a very long story short, I met him when I was building a project team in Kenya. And a few years later, he said to me, "Nick, we need to start a business together." And so here we are, looking for opportunities in the food systems of Kenya. And we eventually landed on peanut butter manufacturing. Now, obviously, that needs some machines, which requires investment. And so, decision-making time. Everyone was very clear in their advice to me. "Nick, how are you going to give money to someone you barely know in a country halfway around the world, which is quite risky, and in a sector which, let's be honest, apart from you like peanut butter, you know absolutely nothing about?" All excellent, excellent questions. But they were tapping into this logical decision-making process. I'm interested here in my values. And from that perspective, I mean, what an amazing adventure to go on. And what an intellectually demanding challenge to figure out how to make that work. And most importantly, this guy's story is phenomenal. He deserves every chance he can get, and I want to be a part of that journey. And so, from a values perspective, it's a no-brainer. And I did it. And I'd love to be able to stand here and tell you that we've nailed it, but we clearly have a lot of hard work to do. But actually, that's totally irrelevant. This story makes me smile. It makes me excited about the world. And at the end of the day, isn't that kind of the only thing that matters? So, tip number 3. If we want to be more, we need to follow our values. And ultimately, living a more meaningful life comes down to doing those 3 things. Appreciate the moment. Feel your way to the right decision and follow your values. Enough of plan A. It's done. Now, it's time for a new plan. Now, it's time for plan B. Thank you.
Nicholas has reminded me of all my Kilimanjaro moments. Could you relate to his speech in any way? Any of you? How many times have we been somewhere where physically we are there, but mentally, elsewhere? He's made us realize that the greatest gift that we could give ourselves is this present moment. So I'm going to take the momentum that Nicholas has generated, and we're going to do a little exercise together, which is called This Moment. This exercise is something that you could try when you're feeling a little bit out of sync with yourself, when your attention, your focus, and your energy has been lost, and to bring it back into the present. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Where are you? What time is it? And what are you? When I ask you, where are you? What will you reply with? Here. When I ask you, what time is it? What will you say? That's very specific. Brilliant. Here, when I ask you, what are you? What will you say? This moment. So let's do it together. Where are you? What time is it? What are you? And now, to launch us from this moment, literally, into the future, our next speaker, an immense enthusiast of biology, will re-engineer our minds to perceive the unnatural as natural. A round of applause, please, for Valeria Stiliano.
In this recombination lab, we use synthesized transfer RNA to clone an entirely new genome, combining the genetic information from all these spiders into these 15 genetically designed super spiders.
When you see this incredible transformation of Spider-Man, what do you think of? That this is just some part of a cool fiction story, right? I mean, nothing like this would actually happen in the real world. Well, what if I told you that what you just saw is actually not that far-fetched? What if I told you that this bizarre phenomenon of a spider's DNA being incorporated into humans might actually be possible now? Genetic engineering. It's happening right now. And the coolest part is that this technology is new. So, how did I come across such a peculiar topic? Well, it all started in the very stuffy biology lab of my high school. Just a normal day where usually I'd be counting the minutes for the bell to ring for break. But this lesson was a bit different. It was the first time that we had talked about what DNA actually is and the immense importance it has in all of us. Something so microscopic found in you, in me, and in every living thing on this planet, and is unique for each and every one of us. What I learned was that DNA is essentially the book of life. And what this technology has the ability to do is rewrite this pre-written script of our whole being as we know it. So I was instantly fascinated about the immense possibilities this meant for the scientific world, that I thought, maybe this is what I wanted to pursue as a career. To no surprise, my parents were quite confused about the whole idea. I mean, in a time where teenagers like me strive to pursue amazing careers such as medicine, mathematics, law, I was telling them I wanted to pursue a career that would involve me doing weird experiments for the rest of my life. My curiosity, though, didn't stop at high school. That very summer, I applied to multiple internships at the Cyprus Institute of Neurology and Genetics. There, I met researchers, and they enchanted me with their years of work and the different methods that they used, only to end it all with, so yeah, this has been our project for the past 20 years, none of it worked. As you can imagine, it was a huge kick in the head for me. But at the end of the day, any finding in science is important, no matter the outcome. There was one thing, though, I was very excited about. I had the chance to extract my very own DNA. The very fact I held my own genetic code in my hands was absolutely mind-blowing. I raised my little test tube in the light to reveal a tiny string in which that tiny string is literally what makes me, me. And the coolest part is that with this technology, that tiny string can be read and molded into something different. So you might be wondering, Valeria, why is this relevant now? Why should we, the people, care about what crazy experiments scientists do in their little rabbit holes of labs? Well, genetic engineering. It's happening now, people. If you have DNA and care about your health and the future of our species, then this directly involves you. We are in the midst of a genetic revolution, and we are nowhere near ready or prepared to control or handle the changes coming our way. So today, I will talk to you about 2 uses of this technology that I came across and found very interesting, and believe will revolutionize our species, as well as dive into the ethics of it all. So, use number 1, healthcare. Genome editing can be greatly owed to the famous Human Genome Project of 2003, where scientists could read every single piece of our DNA. What does that mean? Well, from billions and trillions of A, G, T's, and C's, scientists could figure out the color of your eyes, personality traits, and maybe what you are allergic to, without ever having met you. Now imagine if your doctor had this detailed information about you. What we have now is generalized healthcare, meaning everyone receives more or less the same treatment for common issues. But what if we shifted to specialized healthcare, tailored and designed just for you? Essentially, what we have now is sick care. You get sick, and then you get taken care of. But what if we had the alternative? Your doctor would know possible genetic diseases that could arise in your lifetime and help you prepare for what is to come. With genetic engineering, we have the ability to end many, if not most, genetic diseases, such as thalassemia or cystic fibrosis. Now, this may all sound very convenient. However, we must be sure that this is regulated appropriately, as such sensitive information could end up in the wrong hands. Now, let's consider use number 2 of gene editing, the leisure aspect, or the cosmetic use. At some point in your life, I think we have all blamed certain undesired characteristics on the genes of our family, whether it be anger issues, or hair type, or nose size. Well, what if you had the choice to not pass down these characteristics to your child? You might have seen this coming. I am talking about designer babies. Funnily enough, it's as close to Build-A-Bear as you think. This, however, is illegal, because it is very important to know that it is one thing to permanently mess with the human genome, and a totally different thing to just change how some genes are expressed. Do you think designer babies will be the new norm? Well, if the people want it and ask for it, the companies will supply it. So it is up to us to see whether this practice will become normalized or restricted. Another leisure use of this technology can be found in the category of biohacking. Think of biohacking as DIY biology. It covers a huge range of activities, from performing multiple experiments on different organisms to even changing your own biology. For example, taking a young person's blood, injecting it into your veins, in the hopes that it'll fight aging. And yes, that's a real thing, and it's called young blood transfusion. An example of a biohacker is former NASA member, Josiah Zayner. He believes that everyone should conduct genetic engineering, even in their own basements. Hence, his company called Odin, which delivers GE kits to your door. He is of the belief that we need people who have a combination of knowledge and a little bit of crazy. They will be the ones willing to take the risks. There is a whole community of biohackers out there conducting crazy experiments that we are completely unaware of. Yet, this could be a form of science moving forward. I said it before, and I'll say it again. Genetic engineering. It's happening right now. We are hacking evolution. Now, I just want to take a moment to take all this in. Where do we go from here? Listen to that one more time. Hacking evolution. No longer are we constricted by our own DNA. We will be able to enhance our species in any way we'd like. Is it what someone would consider natural? Maybe not now, but at the end of the day, we will be the ones to decide what is. Take the disease malaria, for example. It kills about 228 million people per year, figures that are much scarier than COVID-19's, just to put into perspective. It can be eradicated by genetically engineering male mosquitoes to become infertile, which would then lead to species extinction. Is that natural? Probably not, as exterminating a whole species cannot be done without any severe consequences. However, will we consider this as adaptation, as survival of the fittest? Is this the way we want to go? This technology is not so different from others. Take nuclear power, for example. Do you think scientists discovered it thinking that humans would take it and make bombs? No. They thought about the clean and renewable energy it would bring us. Well, it's the same with this. This is why I want to talk to you about this today, to create awareness. I'm not asking you to go read books about this or watch lectures. However, it is crucial that we are educated and form an opinion as a society, as we will decide the use of this in our future. What I told you here today will be part of our lives. Genetic engineering is the future, whether you like it or not. What we must do is familiarize ourselves with it and make sure we push it in a positive and safe direction. We are at an era where, with the knowledge and the supplies that we have, anything is possible. With these tools, we can build mountains, but just as well destroy the skies. No one can say this better than with the person who started this talk in the first place, and I would like to close it full circle with him. With great power comes great responsibility. Thank you.
Sorry, I just had to do that. Any Spider-Man fans in here? Who's your favorite superhero? Wow, Black Panther. My wife. No, but it's true though. I mean, it was only recently International Women's Day, so. I don't know about you guys, but listening to Valeria's speech made me ask myself one question. Do we have superhuman powers? What do you think? Yeah, I think so too. Okay, we can't fly. We can't control people's minds. We can't teleport. But I think that if we can find that happiness within us, that it would make us feel like we are flying. Or if we use our imaginations in such a way that it can take us to places that we never imagined. Our next speaker is a Harvard graduate, and she will share her life story of how she went from living on autopilot to living life on her own terms. A round of applause, please, for Anna Fodiadis. I'd just like to remind you, please, no flash photography or video taking during the performances, please. Thank you.
I was 22, and it seemed like I was right on the path to success. I checked all the right boxes. I got good grades all throughout high school. I graduated with honors from Harvard University. I secured a corporate job with a competitive salary at the center of Boston. Yet, it was my very first day of work that had me asking myself, is this how I would define success? I joined the 6 p.m. employee crowd, exiting the office, walked to my train, got off 25 minutes later, and walked to my apartment building. I ran up the stairs to my bedroom, shut the door, leaned on the wall, and slowly slid down to the floor, where I finally burst into tears. Is this what the rest of my life is going to look like? Who signed me up for this? At the sound of that last question, all the life decisions that I didn't take ownership of flashed before my eyes. When I realized that alpine skiing was not my sport, yet I continued doing it competitively for years. When deep down, I knew I didn't want to study economics, yet I applied for it anyway. And finally, when I knew that a traditional 9-to-5 wasn't my cup of tea, I drank it regardless. So is it really a surprise that I find myself on my bedroom floor covered in tears? I spent years mindlessly going through the motions, and it finally caught up to me. But for what felt like the first time, I refused to quiet my intuition. Not again. Not this time. I knew it was time to pick up the pen and start writing my own story. When I later recalled my experience to a close friend of mine, she tried to assure me that it was normal to cry after the first day of work. It happens to lots of people, she said. And I know she had good intentions when she said it, but all I could think about was, why is this normalized? Why are we so quick to settle for a life that doesn't excite or fulfill us? For a life that deep down doesn't feel right? I felt conflicted because I knew that many would consider me incredibly lucky to have landed a fancy corporate job in the United States of America that provided a generous compensation and a satisfactory work-life balance. I recognized that it was a privilege to even consider leaving this path. But was that a good enough reason to stay? I asked myself how I would feel if I were to wake up 20 years from that day on the same trajectory that I was on. While I did see myself being successful by every external measure, I also saw myself unfulfilled, filled with regret, and wishing I would have listened to my gut earlier. That's how I knew that settling would be a huge disservice to myself. My intuition spoke loudly to me that day, and I vowed to never quiet it in favor of comfort and social conforming. Now, unlocking that awareness was instrumental in preventing the effortless complacency that usually comes with a comfortable job. But awareness on its own was not sufficient to break me out of the patterns of behavior that I was conditioned to follow my whole life. My entire life path was setting me up for a corporate career. Was a life outside of the 9-to-5 even possible for me? I had a broad vision of working remotely from around the world on my passions while helping others improve their lives. But at the time, I didn't even know which of those passions to focus on, or what kind of help I would or could be providing. Naturally, I thought that coming up with a strategy must be the answer. I spent a couple of weeks researching different ways I could make money online, and given my marketing experience, I decided I was going to start a social media agency. I took an online course teaching me the skill. I signed up a free client to get a testimonial. I did everything I was supposed to do. However, after a couple of months on the journey, I found out that my US visa didn't allow for self-employment. At that first sign of an obstacle, I gave up. I didn't even try to challenge it. It was like having the pen and the outline, but no ink to write with. I realized that strategy was not the answer either, at least not on its own. There was one key ingredient missing that was truly holding me back, and that was belief. Belief that a life of freedom was possible for me. Stick with me. I know it sounds cliche. We've all heard the saying, believe you can, and you're halfway there. But like most cliches, there is some truth behind it. If you're still skeptical, let me give you a practical example to demonstrate this. Have any of you ever misplaced your headphones? Yep. Well, when that happened, you probably started off by looking for them in your bag, on your desk, maybe, in different pockets, and so on. But if you were unsuccessful after a few minutes of looking, it's very likely that you gave up in frustration. Now consider this scenario. Let's say that your friend tells you that they saw you put your headphones in your bag. This time, when you look in your bag, wouldn't you search every little compartment? Empty it, pat it down, do anything you can until you locate the headphones that you know are there? Even though you're carrying out the same action both times, looking for your headphones in your bag, when you act with certainty that you will be successful, you are relentless in the pursuit of your goals. And you don't let doubt get in the way and convince you to give up prematurely. Your beliefs directly impact your actions and your perseverance. At this realization, I started surrounding myself, mostly virtually, with people who led lives that I looked up to, so that I could bombard my subconscious with images of what is possible. I started setting small goals and achieving them so that I could develop that belief in myself. And lastly, I started taking aligned action with my newly formed beliefs in order to strengthen them. When I opened myself to the possibilities, there were very few things that seemed impossible. So if you believe that you're meant for something other than a predetermined path that you didn't necessarily choose for yourself, then don't you owe it to yourself to at least try to pursue it? We live at a time when people are making a living from playing video games. Others are getting paid to travel the world, and others are meeting their soulmates by swiping right. So let me ask you this. Why aren't your dreams possible? How differently would you be showing up if you had unwavering trust that you would achieve your dream life? belief alone may not take you all the way, but it can definitely add relentlessness to your action and patience to your journey. After 2 years of holding on to my vision, after working on my mindset and developing a deep belief, after saving every extra cent I earned because I knew it would be my ticket to freedom, I did it. I finally quit my job. Now, I know this doesn't sound like the classic fairy tale ending. I'm basically giving a speech about quitting. But this was also a speech about taking ownership of my life, of finally picking up the pen and becoming the author of my own story. Funnily enough, a couple of days after leaving my job, I got asked to give the very TED Talk you are currently listening to. I took that as a sign that when you follow your intuition and trust that things will work out, everything will start falling into place, even if you haven't mapped out the whole story yet. I'm not claiming to have figured everything out at the grand age of 25. In fact, I doubt I ever will. But I stopped waiting until I figured everything out before taking action. It is through action that I've been able to start developing clarity, not the other way around. If I waited until I figured out the ending of the story first, then I would probably still be waiting. And when I stopped waiting, I started causing ripples. After making the decision to let go of my secure job in search of more passionate, fulfilling work, my mom was inspired to leave her job after 30 years in order to follow her dream of becoming an interior designer. When you are authentic and unapologetic in the pursuit of your goals, what you set in motion is way bigger than your own dream. It is always a good time to start rewriting your story. And while it may never be too late, the earlier you do it, the better. Stop delegating your dreams to one day, and instead make today day one, and start with small, messy action. I started with what I knew and took it one step at a time. Personal development has been one of my biggest passions in the past few years, and it completely changed my life. I started sharing my message and personal transformation on social media, which led to people reaching out and asking for my advice, which led to me getting on calls with them to provide more personalized help, which led to me launching my private coaching program on mindset and personal development, which sold out within a couple of days. Each step revealed the next one. Similar to a car driving at night. At any given moment, the headlights only reveal the next 60 meters. Yet, you can cover hundreds of kilometers this way and finally arrive at your destination, because you only really need to see through the next few meters at a time. By staying committed to your bigger vision and trusting in the unfolding of your path, you can cover the distance from where you are to where you want to be, one step at a time. Through taking aligned action, learning and adjusting, I've been able to move forward and slowly start forming the life that I knew was out there for me. Now, I get to wake up excited every day to serve my clients on their own dream journey by helping them gain clarity, overcome limiting beliefs, adopt healthy habits, and transform into the best version of themselves. I'm still working on fulfilling other aspects of my vision, and I couldn't give you my 10-year plan to save my life. But I stay focused on writing one page at a time and have faith in the unfolding of my book of life. I will leave you with one question. Are you the author of your life? And if not, how can you pick up the pen? Thank you.
A note to myself when I'm writing the next page to make sure I do not pronounce someone's name wrong. It was Mary for the others. She was on fire, right? Wow. I think Mary has made us realize that it's important in life to do the things that set our soul on fire, to do the things least expected, so that in years to come, when we open up our book, our life book, our story, and look at the things that we did, we can smile and be proud of what we have achieved. Our next speaker has been in the TEDx spotlight twice already. He is a 15-year-old, multi-talented individual who will discuss the power of online activism and its ripple effect on the world. Unfortunately, due to travel restrictions, he was unable to be with us physically, but we have him on the big screen. A round of applause, please, for Cenk Oz.
Can a like change the world? Not if you listen to the people currently in power. The UN defines clicktivism as supporting a cause by performing simple measures, not necessarily engaged or devoted to making a change. The Urban Dictionary defines slacktivism, as they call it, as the self-deluded idea that by liking, sharing, or retweeting something, you're helping out. They basically imply that if it's simple, you're not committed. If you're not at a protest, homemade banner in hand, you will not contribute to change. But beyond this limited definition of clicktivism, what does it actually mean? Clicktivism can be any form of online social activism. Social change hashtags, viral videos, LGBTQ Snapchat filters, or online petitions. These are already a staple of how Generation Z bring about change. But how do we answer the claim that it's simply a means of appeasing our conscience? Are we truly engaging with the matter at hand? There is mounting evidence to suggest that online activism is far more effective than many assume. Research over the last 10 years suggests that collectivism can be a powerful tool to spread little-known ideas and publicize non-mainstream causes that don't get the attention they deserve. One tweet or post won't change the world, of course, but thousands of them can spread beliefs that will. There is a reason that traditional media gatekeepers tell us that social media can't make a difference. By creating movements online, these traditional gatekeepers simply get shut out. Injustices which have persisted for decades are suddenly getting traction because a wider group of people now get a say in the agenda. And collectivism has a major role to play in carving out this alternative narrative. Amazing things happen when collective, unified digital efforts emerge. We've seen policies changed, we've seen cultures turn, we've seen the powerful end up in prison, and we've even seen governments fall. Perhaps the most obvious question to ask is, how has the internet become the platform for mediating change at scale? Well, like any situation, it's a good idea to look at both sides. A year-long pandemic has taught us to live online. So it's unsurprising that social media campaigns were the spark for street protests and rallies in summer 2020. On the 25th of May last year, the murder of George Floyd incited local protests. 3 nights later, the whole world's feeds streamed with live pictures of protesters burning Minneapolis' 3rd Police Precinct. These local uprisings reached millions who shared in the pain. Then, in June, protests expanded at an unprecedented speed and scale, growing nationally, then internationally, leaving a series of now iconic images and videos in their wake. Major historical events are often linked to the technology of the day. Television footage from Selma changed attitudes around the world. Radios united countries in World War I, and even the printing press sparked riots. What we're witnessing now feels like an exceptionally online moment of social unrest. Critics argue that clicktivism doesn't lead to actual change, and that it oversimplifies complex global problems. Sharing a link or signing a petition is simple, but it's too easy to disengage from the cause just 10 seconds later. And yet, the street protests grew together with the global viral trend of Black Lives Matter activism online. We saw phone footage of toppling statues, screenshots of bail fund donations, protest guides flooding Twitter and Instagram. The momentum has carried well into this year, answering the question if online movements can last. And yet, we still hear voices asking whether social media has changed activism for the better. We all know at least someone, and you may be one of these people, that dismisses online activism. I've been told it's ineffective, a waste of time, and been offered better ways to be an activist without using social media. I've even met people who believe that displaying support for certain causes is just a way to grow your personal brand. Let's start by looking back, before the internet. Movements were far slower to grow. It took a year of organisation to make the 13-month-long Montgomery bus boycott a reality, beginning with Rosa Parks' famous act of resistance. The civil rights movement took a decade of protest and activism to be big enough to attempt the March on Washington. Back then, it was difficult to recruit and retain passionate people. This meant that only the largest and best supported movements could ever thrive. Today's world of digital activism is broad-reaching and immediate, compared to traditional methods of activism. What's astonishing is how many movements have been able to flourish. For example, Saudi women fighting for their right to drive cars through social media, young people taking a stand on global period poverty and having taxes removed through social media, and Native American communities exerting political pressure through cultural websites. Nowadays, digital spaces like Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok are being used to develop our civic identities, to express our political views in a new and creative way. The key difference between Generation Z civic engagement and older traditional forms is the easy entry point. Today, anyone can make super scalable content. We're able to adopt an approach to civic engagement that blends both digital and real-life actions. We think of it as our digital citizenship. Fundamentally different from the traditional media of televisions, newspapers, and films, social media allows us what is called participatory culture. In other words, it allows us to choose what we engage with and shape our own ideas based on our experiences. We become the curators of what's important, rather than any one editor or company, and that is a big shift. These symbolic digital participatory acts can be thought of as moments of claiming our voice. Though on the surface acts of voice may seem trivial and discontented, these acts are the foundation of our digital civic engagement. Young people who engage in digital politics are much more likely to engage in offline political participation, such as voting, provided that they have 3 things: access to technology and digital skills, civic education, and a platform for activism. It's been proven that educating young people on civic issues at an early age is crucial to creating socially woke adults, and a sense of social empowerment can help boost the self-esteem and well-being of young people, a hugely pressing issue for Generation Z. For many movements, one of the most important shifts has been from in-person activism to online action. Digital venues offer new opportunities for growth. In Hong Kong, for example, activists have used the popular online multiplayer game Animal Crossing to spread pro-democracy messaging. We've also witnessed new forms of collective action organised online, such as flash mobs like the #ClapForCarers here at home. Even anti-government protests in Tunisia, Egypt and Ecuador were in part organised and promoted via Facebook. Here's a fact that may surprise you. In recent years, young people's participation in traditional measures of civic engagement, such as voting or joining a political party, has been steadily declining overall in Western democracies. Here's another fact that might surprise you. Generation Z say that their investment in digital networking, protest and volunteerism are actually through the roof. In other words, clicktivism is likely the catalyst for rising political action. With all that out the way, what are the benefits of clicktivism? There are some obvious ones: scale, speed, efficiency, and the ability to reach across borders and raise awareness and funds. Facebook and YouTube have proved ideal for sharing a diverse range of subjects, many of which would otherwise be overlooked by the mainstream. They can play a major part in turning just a fringe cause into a global movement. Secondly, online activism is also more accessible. Those with disabilities were historically excluded from physical protests. Those in rural areas also rarely made their voices heard on national issues. Online, they have an equal voice. There is no medium that allows for this sense of community, just like clicktivism does. However, there are two sides to every story. Online movements can burn out faster than campaigns that spend months or even years forging in-person connections, and there is rarely a well-oiled permanent organisation to follow up on protesters' demands. Some even argue that the digital playing field is tilted towards dictators and disadvantages movements in several important ways. Many dictators tightly control their country's internet service providers. This allows them to easily monitor, censor, and selectively prevent activists from getting and maintaining internet access. India's control over the internet is comparable to some of the world's most authoritarian countries. Yes, while India ranks second in the world in terms of mobile internet subscribers, the country also leads in internet shutdowns to control protesters. And of course, regimes can flood the online space with government propaganda, as they did in Serbia and Honduras in direct response to anti-government protests. Going forward, really effective protests will require not just the right of people to gather, but accessible public spaces in which gathering is possible. Protesters in countries such as China, Russia, and Turkey have been arrested by the thousands and their right of assembly removed. In answer to a blanket ban on protests in Spain back in 2015, activists resorted to protest by hologram. 18,000 people sent in holograms of themselves protesting, which were then projected in front of Congress on a loop for several hours. Sadly, the phenomenon of shrinking civic spaces appears to continue, and digital replicas are just an addition, not a substitute. Despite all the hurdles, many notable activist causes of the past decade are still recognized by their online presence. In 2010, a huge earthquake hit Haiti. The Red Cross were able to garner 2.2 million tweets and raise $20 million in a single week. At one point, they were receiving 10,000 texts per second and went on to raise $500 million in total. I mean, who could forget when 1 out of every 6 Brits participated in the Ice Bucket Challenge, raising $220 million for ALS research? We haven't even begun to discuss the Me Too movement yet, which, amongst everything else, connected 3,600 people with lawyers and raised $24 million to support their efforts on the back of 20 million tweets. And finally, my favourite 14-year-old campaigner, Lucy Gavahan. Her petition asked Tesco to stop selling eggs from caged hens, which made up 43% of the eggs they sold each year. With many signatures and shares on social media, Tesco announced that they would phase out eggs from caged hens by 2025. Some of the most successful movements used online activity to rally support and then combine this with the legwork on the ground, not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. The 2019 climate strike movement is an incredibly successful example of this combination of online and offline activism. Rallying behind Greta Thunberg and Fridays for Future, tens of millions of citizens all over the world mobilized to address the climate crisis and support environmental activism. But is there any correlation between likes and donations and volunteering? Well, studies have shown that given the easy and efficient nature of clicktivism, it does increase the desire for performing other, more difficult behaviors, including money donations and volunteering. Studies have also shown that young people who engage strongly in politics online also do so in their offline lives. So sharing and tweeting politics on social media does in fact correlate with attending political meetings, donating to campaigns, votings, and other forms of civic engagement. At the end of the day, is limited action not always better than no action at all? Well, a Greenpeace activist once said, "Dismissing weak ties because they're not strong would be about as stupid as turning down a kid wanting to empty his piggy bank to donate because we need more money than he can give. That would be insulting and frankly counterproductive." So, what do I think the future of clicktivism looks like? Well, I feel that there is a lot of room for gamification-style features, competitive reward-based systems, and more overt acknowledgement when sharing positive change across social media. We all love a bit of praise, after all. We know that it takes a minimum of 7 exposures to something to produce action. Therefore, we may need more incentives to share social change at a higher frequency than ever before as a way to build and broaden awareness. What if Instagram allowed you to tag and measure your socially conscious posts and stories, enabling you to track your weekly contribution? We could create a global ripple effect every week, and Instagram could share data on how local areas are truly benefiting from these mentions. Yes, it's clicktivism, but it will help people in need of support, increase awareness, and amplify all that is good in the world. So where does this leave us today? The impact of social media on activism cannot be understated. What was once impossible is now possible. Efforts that once required mass mobilizations of door knockers can now be achieved in an instant with a well-placed tweet. The internet is now the front line, and activists must prioritize online messaging or otherwise have their messaging regulated for them. You've all heard the saying, "The pen is mightier than the sword." Well, the power of the click has now joined the fight. Online actions can change a country's policies, drag criminals to court, and bring a sea of people out onto the streets in a matter of hours. The key is doing it together. Social media is now the most powerful tool of communication, and its users are helping activists to build communities, raise awareness, and mobilize. It helps activists to both act and to react. Criticism of social media activism comes largely from those who haven't found their voice online, and from those who are seeing their megaphone taken away by new voices in the conversation. It's a classic case of the generation gap. They do not understand that our words, our data, our clicks online help connect us all with those in power. And this is exactly how a democracy works. We know that today's activists won't be satisfied with mere digital activism. If we're to achieve lasting impacts through our efforts, then this generation must pass the sometimes unfocused energy of digital media and combine it with long-standing principles for building and sustaining social campaigns. But it's difficult to argue that being online hasn't had an impact on the number of people willing to show up for a cause. As someone 15 years younger than the internet, its universal influence has directly shaped the way that I and others born into the online generation engage with social change. For some like me, it makes activism without the ability to connect using social media completely unimaginable. Use your media to grow awareness. Use your voice to bring attention. Use your privilege to drive purpose. And use your time on this planet to create positive social change at scale by harnessing the power of clicktivism. Thank you.
Who would have thought that could change the world? I remember the phones many years ago. The bottom right was always the hashtag, the one that looks like the noughts and crosses that you can play games on. I always used to question myself, well, why does that button exist? Because I'm not using it. But who would have thought that hashtags will change and shape this world? Unbelievable. We're going to do an Energizer now, before we go for a break. Who's up for an Energizer? Okay. This Energizer is called Follow the Leader. I'm going to throw a word at you, and someone from the audience will stand up and throw another word at the audience. Now, what you say doesn't have to be related to what the previous person has said. The important thing is just to stand up and say something. Are you up for it? Should we do it? Okay. When you stand up, you remain standing until everyone is standing. Okay? So it's down to your beat and to your pace, how fast you will all stand up. Okay. The word that I will throw at you is vision. We're all standing. Now give yourselves a round of applause. Now, you're probably wondering, why did we do this? Because, first of all, this was an experiment to myself and to everyone, but to yourselves also, is to understand that every person has a leader in them and a voice. It doesn't matter what you said or what you didn't say or what you planned on saying, but it's acting in that moment, taking the courage to stand and say something. And this is important in the real world, to embrace that moment, because you have a voice and you can stand for it. Okay. So now we have a break, a 30-minute break. Due to restrictions, as you all know, we are unable to provide any form of beverage or food. We will provide you with a lunch pack at the end of the day, so you can enjoy something from us. So see you in 30 minutes, guys. Bye-bye.
Playing with music. Ready. 1, 2, 3, dance.
Welcome back, everybody. Part 2. Before we continue with the speakers, we're going to do a couple of energizers just to get our bodies moving and the blood circulating and just to get in touch with ourselves a little bit more. Okay. Who can tell me how many times they can hop in 45 seconds? I want to hear some answers. 45, look, 45, 60, 80. Wow. Okay, well, I'm sure all of you have got their own number in their head, but we're going to put it to the test. Those that don't want to take part of the hopping, fine. So please, if you could stand up. If you space out a little bit so you're not bumping into each other. Could we have a timer, please, on the screen? 45 seconds. Okay. Okay. No. Could you restart it, please? It's okay. Wait. Can you pause it? It's okay, we've got plenty of time. I mean, the last year and a half, we've lost some time. Doesn't matter if we lose another 45 seconds. Okay, while they fix this. So basically, the hop has to be a normal hop. No speed hopping, no slow motion hopping, just a... Okay? Let's give it another 10 seconds. While we're waiting, give me a power clap. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Pow, pow. Oh, yeah. That's the spirit. That's the spirit. Okay. 45 seconds. Let's go. Can you start the clock, please? Start hopping. Hop, 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 hop. Wow, if you could see my view from here, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm sure you've reached 30, maybe 40. Guys at home, you know, sorry I didn't mention, I hope you're taking part in this. 20 seconds to go. Wow, you guys up there, you're raving. Okay, 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Brilliant. So, what's the conclusion? How many did you do? So basically, you exceeded your own expectations. Amazing. Wow. Okay. How many people go to the gym? Or exercise, running, walking, yoga, everything. Okay. Now, the only part of the body that we don't exercise is the face. Apart from maybe the odd chewing gum, just to exercise the cheek muscles. So now we're going to do a bit of face yoga, which is called the kiss. I want your feet firm on the ground. Have a straight back, okay? And I want you to put your fingers on your collarbone, okay? And I want you to raise your chin up to the ceiling, okay? Okay. Have the timer ready, please. When I say so, please. And for 45 seconds, I want you to start blowing kisses to the ceiling like this. It's very important. I want to hear that noise. Okay? 1, 2, 3, start kissing. Think of all the animals. Think of your dog, your cat, all your loved ones. Think of all those kisses that you weren't able to give in the last year and a half, release them. You're exercising your lips, your neck, and everything. Oh wow. This sounds, I wish I could describe this sound, but I can't think of a word. Okay, 10. Okay, calm down. Oh, how do you feel? I bet you've never given so many kisses in 45 seconds. Okay, let's just move on. Sure, are you ready to go deep? Okay. Our next speaker has also had the privilege of being in the TEDx spotlight. He will share with us his account of how Generation Z has endured this era of terror recently and how an era of opportunity awaits them. Unfortunately, Harry was unable to be with us physically, but we have him on the big screen. A round of applause, please, for Harry Beard.
Generation Z. Will we let COVID-19 define us? Will we allow coronavirus to dictate the narrative for our generation? Generation Z was being labelled as the generation of opportunity, the limitless generation, the generation who would change the world for the better. We are now the generation who is living through coronavirus and will have to live with all of the challenges that the virus has brought about. Generation Z is the cohort born between 1995 to 2010, a generation who has had access to more opportunities than ever before. We're able to educate ourselves for free and at our own pace via YouTube. We're able to start businesses for free and market ourselves via Instagram. We're able to share our thoughts for free and with the masses via Twitter. We have been blessed with opportunities that no other generation has ever had, which means we interact with the world around us in a different way to any past generation. The way we interact with each other and attempt to solve problems has completely changed. No longer do we need to go to a post office and write letters or buy stamps to stay in touch with friends. We just use Snapchat. No longer do we need to go to a library and spend hours finding books to gain information. We just use Google. Life has been relatively easy for us in a lot of different ways, but we are currently facing our biggest hurdle yet, a hurdle which many truly believe will be a defining moment for our entire generation, something that our great-great-grandchildren will study in history classes one day. We cannot neglect what COVID-19 has done to us as a global populace. Millions of deaths, tens of millions of cases, families torn apart all across the globe, global economies ruined. It is impossible to neglect what this virus has done to all of us. That I cannot stress enough. This virus has and will continue to affect our lives irreversibly. We, the youth, have lost loved ones. We face the toughest job market in a generation. We've lost countless opportunities. We've not been able to make and meet new friends, which is the very essence of our early lives. In just 6 months after the announcement of lockdown, the Samaritans received 1.2 million phone calls, with 25% of callers expressing that they are having suicidal thoughts. This is a period of complete and utter destruction. And unfortunately, we still have a relatively long way to go. Now, I've been lucky. I have not lost a loved one to COVID. The worst thing that's happened to me was enduring lockdown in the same way that we all had to. So I do speak from a position of immensely good fortune. However, with this unwanted period of empty time, there has been one real question that keeps coming to mind. Will we as a generation allow this virus to determine our futures and the narrative surrounding our cohort? Just over a year ago, we were the generation who will change the world with our adoption of technology, as well as a genuine interest in moving towards an entirely sustainable planet. I do not believe that this has changed. Even in the darkest times, we can find reasons for hope and strength without overlooking the absolutely devastating negatives. We can ask, what have we learned from this period, and how can we use it to better ourselves going forward? We've had so much time to stop pursuing our passions. Usually, to start following your own true desires and passions, you would need to take a bit of a risk, potentially quit your job or forsake your social life. Most of us are no longer commuting to work. Many of us were put onto schemes such as furlough. We're not allowed to even go into work. Bars and restaurants in some parts of the world remain closed to this day. Now, these restrictions are not a dream come true. Please do not get me wrong. But they have provided us with a chance to focus on our personal goals. We cannot see our friends so readily, so now we're able to focus that time into personal projects. Maybe that's building a business, making an album of songs, or starting a charity. Now, the path of using time gained from recently lost opportunities for personal development is one that many have decided to tread. America is seeing a 13-year high for new businesses starting, owing entirely to coronavirus. We're seeing thousands of new content creators growing followings of millions of people using their creative talents on platforms like TikTok. It's a common truth that sometimes a little bit of chaos can actually provide us with the opportunities that we need in order to shape our own destinies. Recessions always lead to new organizations and leaders emerging. General Motors launched just after the 1907 crisis. CNN took to air when the US inflation hit 15% in 1980. And modern organizations like Airbnb and Uber all rose to prominence after the 2008 global financial crisis. Throughout history, periods of turmoil have always allowed for new leaders to shine and new ideas to grow. Throughout this period we are currently going through, maybe you've had the chance to start thinking about your long-term ambitions. What can you be doing to get yourself ahead? There will be thousands of young people who also want to achieve your long-term goals. What can you be doing to get yourself ahead? To ensure that you put yourself in the best position to achieve your own long-term objectives. Thousands of others want to do the same thing that you do. So let's start using our pockets of time wisely now to ensure that we can fulfill our potential. This is your chance to get ahead and ensure that you are on the right pathway to fulfilling your potential and reaching your long-term goals. We've always been a generation with everything we could ever need or want at our fingertips. But maybe these tools that we grew up with and we're so blessed to have had have actually made it harder for us to break out and to thrive. Maybe this is our generation's first moment to start breaking through. Now, everyone's attention has been diverted, and completely rightfully so, but maybe this is our chance to start laying the foundations for ourselves to fulfill our personal long-term objectives. One of the things we must remember, particularly as I speak from a British perspective, after every recession, there is a spike in recruitment. So using this time wisely now for personal development, even if your music doesn't achieve the numbers you hope, or your business doesn't take off as you'd expect, one thing that is for certain is that you're getting yourself ahead of the competition, ready for when companies begin hiring again. This is a chance to really expand your horizons, to develop your own skills, and you know for sure that you'll benefit from doing it one way or another. Also, I believe that there has never been a generation better placed to deal with the job crisis like our generation. We are a generation who is consistently proving ourselves to be great at creating our own opportunities through enterprise. This is what we are known for in a way that no other generation has been. Dedicating this additional time we've unwillingly been dealt productively to your own personal projects will allow you to progress without a doubt. So what are you waiting for? Use this 10 minutes or so now to reflect and give yourself some perspective. We've been so lucky. We now face a tough time, but we know that tough times only bring out the best in the world, the best leaders, the best ideas, the best talents. Now, what are you going to do in order to make the most of this period? Are you going to ensure that this period will be one that our great-great-grandkids look back on and say, this was the generation who embraced innovation and caused major social changes? This really is our chance to determine our own narrative here. There's a reasonably cliched quote, but I think it's a truthful one. Tough times do not last, but tough people do. I believe truly and wholeheartedly that we are a generation of resilient, persistent and creative people. No matter what the media speculates or what YouTube comment sections say about us belonging to the snowflake generation, we are a generation that faces a constant flurry of rejection, a generation that must keep up with constant changes and innovations, a generation who feels like they have to be perfect or face being cancelled. So what will you do, starting today, to ensure that you come out of this period in a better position than how you came into it? Throughout the talk, the narrative is really focused on why we should worry about ourselves and almost selfishly use this time to benefit us individually. Let's not forget why it's important for us, the youth, as a collective, to step up. We shape and drive innovation. We, the youth, have such an important role to play. The World Economic Forum said that we're on the cusp of a fourth industrial revolution, highlighting creativity as one of the top 3 most important soft skills to have, with speculation surrounding creativity to take the #1 spot. I don't know about you, but when I think creativity, my mind instantly paints a picture of young people coming together to build the future. So if we are, as the World Economic Forum predicts, on the cusp of a fourth industrial revolution, then I don't think it's too bold to claim that we, our generation, Generation Z, will be at the forefront of it. So if you are the type of person who wants to be driving change, either from the front as a leader or from behind the scenes, right now is your opportunity to get ahead, to start pushing yourself and your ideas forward. Generation Z has always been one that is bold. With COVID being a time of pain and a time of uncertainty, it will lead to more people being hesitant. But this is the time to take a risk. Someone has to be the next big musician, entrepreneur, or activist. This all is not just to benefit yourself, but society as a whole is relying on us to be ready for this fourth industrial revolution. Our generation has already been standing up. Alyssa Carson, the 19-year-old astronaut in training, and is preparing to be the first human on Mars. Yet again, Generation Z is proving that we can accomplish world-defying achievements at younger ages than ever before. Young people are also using their voices to influence society in the most meaningful of ways. Individuals like Bamini Love, Nadia Okamoto and Gabby Edlin have campaigned tirelessly for years to ensure that the tampon tax is to be removed, and in 2020 we saw nations like Great Britain and states all across the USA wake up and begin to change laws as a direct consequence of the work that these young people put in. Well, let's think about Marcus Rashford, who used his platform to ensure that young people did not go hungry throughout lockdown and beyond, forcing the British government to rectify their own policy and to act rapidly. Marcus then also held the government accountable for their shortfallings and reacted to his demands, ensuring that free meals were available for all young people. We, the youth, are beginning to shape our environments at a younger age than ever before. It is important, not just for ourselves, but for society as a whole, that we stand up for our beliefs and keep pursuing our passions. It's also important that we look out for each other. This period is one that is mentally draining. Our generation is known for being one that looks to offer support, both physically and emotionally. Only by supporting one another will we be able to come out of this period in the best possible way. Even in the darkest times, we can find reasons for hope and strength. The best way to do this is by supporting one another so we can all find our own hopes and our own strengths. So no matter what your driving force is, becoming a performer, an entrepreneur, or an activist, Right now is the most important period of our lives to wake up and realize that we've been blessed with so many opportunities that the overwhelming majority of us currently overlook. Now is the time to get ahead and become the change makers that we've always wanted to have been and we've always predicted to be. Now is the time to support one another to ensure we can all make the most of our opportunities. We are now the generation who's living through coronavirus and will have to live with all of the devastating challenges COVID has brought about. Generation Z is the generation of opportunity, the limitless generation, the generation who will change the world for better. Will we allow coronavirus to dictate the narrative for our generation? Thank you.
Who amongst you has experienced some opportunities in the recent year? That's good. Were they opportunities that you believed that you weren't expecting, or you were expecting? You weren't expecting. So I think despite whether we go through a hard time as individuals or as a nation or as a globe, I believe if we look carefully in between the lines, we can always see an opportunity. Now the opportunity might not come as we think, in the shape or the form that we would like to achieve our goals, but I believe that whatever the opportunity is, whether it's to personally grow or to set up a business or an activity, that eventually we will achieve that. And there's a saying which says that the roots of a tree only get stronger with the wind and the rain. And just have that in mind. Some people graduate from university and others from adversity. Our next speaker will talk to us about the ups and downs that he has endured. A round of applause, please, for Faisal Alaidi.
The eyes, they look, but the brain, it sees. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you something today, but I want you to see it through your hearts and brains, and not through your eyes. So actually, sit back and close your eyes. Go ahead, I'll wait. Now, I want you to imagine a really, really deep hole. A hole that's so deep, it feels bottomless. Can you see it? Now I want you to imagine that you, yes, you, are falling down that hole. What happens? Your heartbeat, it quickens, you start to panic. You try to hold on to the imaginary walls of the hole, but you can't. You're pulled down by gravity and engulfed by darkness. You open your eyes and grab your chair handles. The darkness is replaced by light. And for a second, you appreciate the reality of being stable and not falling. Ladies and gentlemen, you have just experienced life. Life, in its simplest essence, can be described as a free fall down an infinitely deep yet very narrow hole. Everybody is born into their unique position in the whole of life, a position that they have inherited from their parents. So, where in this whole of life did my life start? Well, I grew up a Palestinian immigrant. The result of a conflict I had no part in. Growing up, my family was your average working class immigrant family. So, according to the whole analogy, I was born at the lower parts of the hole, but I never actually hit the bottom. Keep in mind though that it was always within view distance. You can imagine how that gets scary very quickly. When I think of the whole analogy, I'm taken back to a time when I was 6. At the time, I was waiting for my dad to come back from work. I was excited yet anxious. He walks in through the door with a very tired look on his face, but he smiles when he sees me. He always smiled when he used to see me. And he bends down to hug me, and I cling on to him. He starts heading towards his bedroom to get some rest when I hold his hand and point to the TV and say, Dad, can I get this toy? It was a simple remote-controlled car of the car's protagonist, Lightning McQueen. I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with the Disney movie. It was a very simple toy at the time, but every time I passed by the Market Street, I used to stare at it, so fascinated. I really wanted it at the time. My dad bent down and with sorrow in his eyes and sadness in his voice said, "Son, if I could, I would give you the world, but maybe not right now." That moment, I felt like I lost my grip on the walls of the whole of life. I felt like I was plummeting towards the bottom, engulfed by darkness. But I saw the light at that moment. I made a promise to myself that I will never fall again. But how? How would I do that? How would I climb? The answer came the very next day. My dad walked back from work again, but with something in his hand this time. He calls me over and hands me over a notebook with Lightning McQueen on it. He bends down and says, "Son, in this world you may lose your toys, your most precious possessions, even your friends and family. But you will never lose the knowledge that you've garnered." That moment, my dad set course for my life years to come. He gave me the wisdom and the tools that I needed to climb up the hole of life. One may climb the hole with many means: money, fame, exceptional talent, even connections. But if a person doesn't have the needed knowledge, they will never reach the heights that they aspire to reach. Growing up, I was part of an Arabic-speaking family. English wasn't spoken very often around my household. And I grew up in Saudi Arabia, so in public, Arabic was mostly spoken there, not English. Coming to Cyprus, I was faced with a challenge, not knowing Greek or English. My dad's words rung in my ears. I fueled my life with knowledge and used the power of the internet to teach myself both Greek and English. Furthermore, thank you. Furthermore, I read essays and articles on history, and I came into contact with the various rich cultures of the world, all the way from my bedroom. I also used the power of the internet to teach myself about philosophy, logic, and politics, things that are unfortunately not taught today in schools. And that's what I want you to take from this. I want you for a second to think and assess what is helping you climb and what is pulling you down. You and I might be in very different positions in the whole of life. That's a fact. But the very fact is that we are both in it, and we both have to make an effort to climb. Growing up, I do realize I didn't have many advantages. But I was lucky. I was lucky enough to have a great family, amazing parents, great friends, and the education that I needed to morph me into the person I am today. Success may mean different things for many people, but personally, my idea of success is being able to break my fall and climb up. But I don't want you to think of success as a race, where we tumble over each other and push others down so we can climb up. I want you to think of success as a collective motion towards the top of the hole. I want you to think of it as a coordinated motion. The whole of life might be unbelievably harsh to take on alone. But if we all work together, we can reach the heights we need to reach. I want to give my community back what it offered to me, and I want to fight the harshest fight with the people that I know. So in a few years, I aspire to become a doctor. Growing up, being a doctor and saving lives seems so noble. But now that I actually understand the whole analogy, and I understand the value of life, it represents something way bigger. It represents giving people another chance to climb. It represents giving people another chance to climb the top of the hole and reach new heights and innovate and change the way that we live. I am Faisal Al-Aidi, and today I told you my journey in this hole of life. I urge you to think, where are you in this hole of life, and how do you plan to climb? Thank you.
I'm not sure about you, but listening to Faisal's speech brought one thing into mind, that despite culture, race, or color, difficulties and challenges will hit us. And if things like this do not discriminate between people, then we should learn to understand that we are all the same, and that we're defined by our source, because we all come from the same place, rather than our destination. Before I announce the next speaker, I would like to inform you that the topic she will discuss is very sensitive. If for any reason you do not feel comfortable, you may leave the auditorium. You will not be misunderstood, but fully understood. Our next speaker will take us to a place of vulnerability and rawness, telling us a story which some of us need to hear and others have been waiting to hear. A round of applause, please, for Anna O'Neill.
I was throwing up blood. At the time, it seemed easy and efficient. But it was then that I realized I had a real problem. I turned to look at myself in the mirror. My lips were cracked. My throat was burning. And my teeth were starting to decay. I had never felt so disgusted and uneasy by my own presence. And I wanted to change. I really did. But I didn't know how. Yet I felt this spark of motivation. Today is the last day you do this, I said to myself. But things took a different turn. Before I knew it, I was weighing out and tracking every single thing that I ate, refusing to eat what couldn't be tracked on MyFitnessPal. Motivation became obsession. 1,200 calories a day dropped to 500 until I was eating nothing but an apple a day. Some days I ate nothing at all, and I was proud of this, of the fact that I could go 5 days with no food. Within 2 months, I had lost 30% of my body weight, but I saw no difference when looking at myself in the mirror. I was just as disgusted as before. And my body began to fight back. I started binging on anything and everything I could find in the house. I'd wake up with wrappers surrounding me and food spilt all over my bed with zero recollection of the night before. And to compensate, I had these terrible habits. I would chew my food and spit it out, or I'd pour soap on it so that I wouldn't be able to eat it. I was driving myself completely insane This was an endless cycle that I was convinced would continue for the rest of my life. But now I'd like to draw your attention to the screen behind me. So, a show of hands, who can confidently say that this is blue? Okay. Well, maybe I disagree. Maybe I think it's green. Okay, well, you may now think I've completely lost the plot, but I can assure you, online schooling has not driven me completely insane yet. But what does any of this have to do with eating disorders? Well, it's all about perception. We are well aware of what we are putting ourselves through, and we know it won't lead to our long-term happiness. But what you may see as blue, we may see as green. The same way that what you may see as food, we may see as lack of control, calories, judgment, and the list goes on. I developed an eating disorder when I was 12, and for the last 5 years, I have searched deep within me to find, well, the strength and the energy to try and recover. It wasn't until roughly May of last year that I began to do so. Why? Because I was terrified. Because I felt alone and misunderstood, and I had this intense fear of being judged by others. You see, I had somewhat of a reputation for being really healthy and into fitness and maintaining an athletic body, but the pressure that comes with such a label really strips away its worth. Okay, Anna, do you really want to wake up in 10 years' time with the same fear of food? No, of course I don't. And it's my responsibility to take that first step forward. It is up to me to change the green into blue. One day, I was out for a lockdown walk with my closest friend, and she began to open up to me about her disordered thoughts and habits. At first, she spoke about it so calmly and with such ease, it made me feel slightly uncomfortable, and I didn't really understand why. For some reason, there's a stigma around the topic. But I was hit with this brick of reality. The more I listened, the less alone I felt, and all I wanted to do was comfort her, tell her it was going to be okay, and that I knew exactly what she was feeling. I can confidently say that she is the main reason I wanted to recover in the first place. And I cannot thank her enough. Hearing someone I love so dearly talk about their experience truly helped me start to heal from mine. I mean, logically, if I wouldn't want her to suffer, how could I possibly excuse the fact that I was letting myself suffer for so many years? Almost immediately after that day, the stigma I felt around recovery completely disappeared. My Instagram was flooded with motivational posts and encouraging words to keep me going. And I even started watching YouTube videos from people sharing their own experiences. I really understood now that millions of people were going through the exact same thing. I found a great deal of strength in that. But of course, I don't want to glamorize anything. Recovery is one of the hardest things you can put yourself through, mentally and physically. Personally, I don't believe anyone has ever done recovering because it simply isn't a linear process. It's not something you can meticulously track and plan out. You know, you have to have those slip-ups, you have to have those relapses and moments where you break down because you've given it everything and yet nothing is working. Honestly, I've lost track of the amount of times that I have binged again, or exercised excessively, or had obsessive thoughts, but it's gotten me so far, to the point where I can order food without feeling guilty, or go out to dinner with my friends without having to say, oh, sorry, actually, I'm not hungry. I have gained a new sense of freedom. Honestly, I find this topic very difficult to discuss. I felt very awkward and detached when I was writing this, which I found very strange considering how personal it is. I understand that many of you may feel a sense of detachment from your own stories. Whether that's because of the stigma around them or the anxiety that comes with recalling such terrifying moments of your life is not what actually matters. What really matters is not allowing this detachment from reality block your view of how serious an eating disorder is and allow it to stop you from bettering yourself. I found this quote the other day that really resonated with me, and I would like to share it. Much like other addictions, eating disorders freeze emotions and can become a detour from real hurt and pain. I now see that one reason it took me so long to notice the urgency of my own situation was the fact that I refused to accept that I needed help. I distracted myself from thinking of it as an issue. I numbed myself into believing it was normal. At some point, you reach a pinnacle where you can no longer tell what's real from what isn't and what is triggering you to do this. But I want to clarify that I am not trying to victimize myself or any other individuals going through this, nor am I trying to place myself on a pedestal. All that I want to do here is normalize speaking out and opening up to each other. To be honest, it took me a lot of courage and contemplation to decide how much of my story I wanted to share here with you today. But would you look at me differently now than from the moment that I walked onto this stage? Would you talk to me differently, treat me differently? Would you pity me now? If so, then why? Why do we choose to label people based on their struggles? Do not look at me and label me as the girl who once had an eating disorder. Instead, be aware of the commonality of it. See it, acknowledge it, and let it ground you, because this fear of being labeled is what's keeping so many people from reaching out. And it's why eating disorders have one of the highest mortality rates of any other mental disorder. At first, I wasn't going to share any of my story with you here today. I had trouble translating my emotions into words in a way that I thought would do justice to this topic. Listen, I used to study literature, and I am very good at describing other people's emotions. When it comes to myself, not so much. But this is me being as raw as I possibly can be, telling you to embrace your vulnerability because it does not make you a weak person. Anyone can stay back and not speak up, but not everyone is brave enough to admit that they need help. Everyone in this room has either dealt with their own eating disorder or knows someone who has. Please know that no matter what stage of the disorder you're in, you deserve to recover. You deserve to feel free, and you deserve to love yourself regardless of your own or other people's expectations. There is an amazing life beyond the eating disorder. I promise you, you will not regret it. And perhaps this will no longer be so green. Thank you.
Had it all.
One word. Brave. It's not easy for someone to stand here and open up their soul and reveal a certain truth. I know Anna mentioned the color blue and green, but I think for some people, they can see a rainbow because of her talk. Where are you? What time is it? What are you? We have nearly come to the end of today's event. For some, it will be a new beginning on how to approach their life. Our 7 speakers, Nicholas, Valeria, Mary, Cenk, Harry, Faisal, and Anna, have taken us into their depth so that we can change the direction of our growth. It's important to recognize that standing in front of an audience and speaking your mind and your truth is not easy. But it is through this process that we are able to make the world we all live in a better place. Allow me to step out of the shoes of MC for a second. The younger generation is always told to listen to the older generation because they know better. And to a certain degree, it's true. But the older generation needs to listen carefully at the youth, to listen to the frequency at which their passions, their challenges, and their existence vibrates at. Everybody in this room has the same tools. You have a different DNA, but you have the same tools, which you alone are able to configure in such a unique way that will enable you to extract and identify your own unique existential identity. I want you all to reach into your pockets and take out the stars that you grabbed at the beginning of this show. Take them out and put them to your heart. Leave your hand there. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and release it. And repeat after me. I have immense potential and greatness to make a difference. I am a powerful purpose to this world. Open your eyes. I'd like to thank you for being here today and being such a good audience. I wish you the best of luck in whatever you choose to do or whatever you choose not to do in your lives. Always stay present. Thank you. I would like to introduce now our next performance, which is Team Hip Hop Collective Center in collaboration with Kala Dancing Studio, Connecting the Dots. Enjoy.
What a day. What a morning. No, what a morning, sorry. It's so unbelievable seeing these many faces in person on the 1-year anniversary of lockdown in Cyprus. I truly want to thank you all for coming. I hope you got some value out of it. I hope I helped replace some sort of superficiality with some sort of depth. And none of this would be possible, of course, once again, without our incredible sponsors, but also without the people who made this possible. Firstly, I'd like to call my incredible team. Sebastian Nikita, our head of people. Maria Kimiadou, our head of event management. Stella Nicolau, our head of marketing. Anfisa Carniva, our head of finance. Evie Bridger, our head of design. But next, I'd like to thank our volunteers, all volunteers who are here. Sam, Chrissy, Morpho, whoever's here, can you come onto stage, please? Christina. Okay, Sam is helping us out from upstairs. A big round of applause for Sam. I'd like to thank our speaker coaches, Senya Papandreou, Richa Tandon, our speaker coach, and my personal therapist. And if the song still allows, can we also have the speakers come on stage? And let's social distance a bit. Speakers, performers. Come on. Where's Andros?